What's up, guys? My name is Mike, and this is the Bored Cyborg. Now, this is a film-based channel, but that doesn't mean that I don't have other hobbies, because I do. I have quite a few other hobbies. One of those that I'm equally as passionate about is video games. It's something I want to incorporate into my channel a little bit more as we go on, and I thought this would be a good way to kind of introduce you to the kind of video game collector that I am. I am a retro collector. I've been collecting since the early 90s technically, but really started collecting when I was around 10 years old, going into Funko Land with very little money, coming out with a ton of NES games, a lot of which are still in my collection. A lot of it I've just acquired over the years. I mean, I'm 31 now. I've been collecting technically since I was 10. Do the math. I mean, that's the reason why I have all this good stuff here. And I love all of it. And today I'm going to talk about my Super Nintendo collection and my Nintendo collection and all the stuff that's up here. I'm going to split it into two parts. So the first part will be the display and the Super Nintendo. Second will be NES solely. So I hope you guys enjoy this kind of video. Don't fret if you don't care for video games. This is just a bonus video, technically. I'm still going to be getting out my 2 videos a week, film-centric, and but I wanted to talk about games because I know some of you enjoy them. If you collect yourself, feel free to leave down in the comments below what you enjoy collecting, what kind of games you like playing, some of your favorites, etc., etc. I'd love to kind of get to know you guys in that realm as well, since I've gotten to know a lot of you cinematically, so that would be awesome. Anyway, let's take a look at the collection. Alright, so here is the Nintendo collection and the Super Nintendo collection. Mostly NES here. I do have some 64 up top. I'm going to show you guys everything here. I'm going to go piece by piece, and I know some of you are dying to know what these posters are here. Got the Manitou, got Zatoichi, got End of the World, and a little movie called Star Wars? I don't know. Never heard of it. Anyway, let's start looking. So right here, this is my Super Nintendo shelf, I guess. So up here we have Wordtris, which is a game that I just picked up a couple of years ago, actually. It's not very often you see a complete in-box game at a Goodwill. So I picked this up from Goodwill. Wordtris, still haven't played it. I guess it's like Tetris, but with words. Donkey Kong 64, I do have some of my boxed 64 games up here. Got a little Judge Dredd Valentine emblem there. My buddy got me for Christmas one year. Pretty sweet. And then little Link, cartoon Link here from Wind Waker. The DS stuff as well, so pretty cool. Coming down here, a really cool Link to the Past figure with the likeness from the Link to the Past manual, things like that. It's really, really cool because they got the Toon Link one there too, and then they have the Twilight Princess Skyward Sword Link there. So, but I love the original. I love all the designs, but the original Link from the Super Nintendo is incredible to have. Got this at Ed McKay, actually, a bookstore I used to work at. That back there is a puzzle. Also got that from Ed McKay. I'm not really keen on opening it. I'll probably keep it sealed. Maybe one day when I can frame it and stuff like that, I'll do that. One of the few Famicom games I have. Got this at the old bookstore as well, Ed McKay. Ease. Which is a game that never came to America on the NES. Came on the PC Engine. The Genesis had some sequels to it, but not the NES. But so I had to get the Famicom version. I think it's an RPG, but I don't think there's too much Japanese text. I'm sure there's a bit. It's more of an action-heavy RPG. And then back here, the lone Sega item in this entire shelf is Final Fight CD. Now, the reason why I have this here is, well, for one, it's one of my favorite games, Final Fight of all time. I've never played the Sega CD version, but I've had this in the collection for years, and it's one of my most expensive, rare, valuable, etc., games. So I wanted it. I didn't want it in the closet. I wanted it up here. It's worth a couple $100 in the condition it's in, or at least like $150. So really wanted to keep it in the safe place, and you gotta love that badass 90s artwork. I mean, Final Fight CD, baby. Which is the definitive version of Final Fight, because it's 2 players, has, CD, audio for music, just perfect all the way around. So if you're going to play Final Fight, That's the way, bro. Alright, so moving down here to the Super Nintendo collection. Probably going to do the Super Nintendo collection and up top for one video, one part of this, and then do the NES collection for the next part. I'm going to try to make this 2 parts, but I'm not going to talk about every game here. If I have some memories with it or whatever, I'll discuss them. But ActRaiser 1 and 2, these are great games with music by Yuzo Koshiro, who did Streets of Rage music, some of my favorite music ever, period. Hello, dog. We got ActRaiser 2, we got Axelay, one of the best shooters I've ever played. I'm not a huge shooter fan because I get frustrated easily, but since I've been meditating, I'm able to play these without getting too frustrated, but they still piss me off. But this one balances the difficulty with the sense of reward and accomplishment so damn well. Alien 3, there you go. There's a movie-based game, Alien 3. Not a bad game, kind of Metroidvania-esque. I really do enjoy it. Good music, too. Great game, great beat-em-up here. It's a one-player beat-em-up, sadly, but Konami did a great job with Batman Returns, really, getting a lot of the vibes from the original movie, the atmosphere of the film, the look, the aesthetic, the music. It's all here for Batman Returns. Love this game. Played it growing up. Played it when it came out, and still play it to this day. Breath of Fire. I'm very attached to Breath of Fire because it was one of the first RPGs I had ever played, turn-based Japanese role-playing games. Shortly thereafter the first was Final Fantasy III. The second was Breath of Fire. Final Fantasy III meaning Final Fantasy VI. Bugs, Buster Bust Loose. Loved playing this game with my mom back in the 90s. She really liked it. Vibrant, fun platformer. Chrono Trigger. I've owned all these games for a long time, guys, by the way. I didn't spend a lot of money on them. I think I got this for $20 10 years ago or so. Chrono Trigger, one of the greatest RPGs of all time, and one of my favorite games of all time. Clock Tower. This is not an original release. This is actually a reproduction, and it's a fan-translated reproduction. So it's translated into English. This game never came out here in America, and it is hard to play without knowing Japanese. I've played this recently. I think last October I tried it, and it's really good, but goddamn is it hard. I mean, you need a walkthrough for this type of game. You really do, to get the full enjoyment out of it. It's a survival horror game on the Super Nintendo, one of the first of its kind, where you're being stalked by a killer with giant shears, not unlike The Burning. And this game actually takes a bit from Suspiria, thematically, and some of its imagery, including, and it also takes from, Creepers, or Phenomena, which is Jennifer Connelly in a Dario Argento movie. In fact, the lead character looks just like Jennifer Connelly. So, pretty cool connection to horror movies there. Contra 3, grew up playing Contra 3 with my mother. Absolutely love Contra 3. Still such a brutal game, but the perfect Contra game in my opinion. Cool Spot, a fun, colorful platformer here that was on the Genesis as well. 2 different games, actually. And, of course, the Donkey Kong Country games, 2 and 3. I have number 1 up there sealed, or not sealed, but complete in box. I'll show off later. Love those games. Some incredibly fond memories playing those games when they came out. I was 7 when the original came out, and it blew my mind. So, Donkey Kong Country, you can't go wrong with those games. Some of the best platformers ever made. F-Zero, one of the best racers ever made. F-Zero. Family Feud. Super nostalgic for this game. My family and I used to play this all the time. And we still play it every year when my sister comes down for Christmas with the siblings, sometimes the mother, and we play Family Feud because it's even more fun today because you got to think like you're thinking in the early 90s. It's so much fun. I love Family Feud. Very nostalgic for this game. Good answer. All right, I was talking about Final Fight. There you go. The original that I grew up playing, which is the inferior version. I didn't know that growing up, but it is the inferior version. Still love it to this day. Don't care. I'll still play it by myself, in my underwear, drinking a beer. I love it. Final Fight 2. I don't own any of the Final Fantasy games on Super Nintendo. It's the gaping hole in my Super Nintendo collection, which I'm actually pretty happy with. But Final Fight 3, I don't own. Super rare. Grew up playing it, though. renting it. Goof Troop. My mom and I used to play this game all the time. Dad was the Genesis and Nintendo and Sega CD and Saturn. I used to play with him all of those systems. But my mom really loved the Super Nintendo. And so I loved playing a lot of the co-op games with her. Goof Troop is one we have great, great fond memories of. Driving each other crazy and trying to work together. It's still one of the best co-op games, puzzle sort of action games on the console. Gradius 3, can't go wrong, great shooter. Another game my mom and I and sister and brother used to play all the time. The Mickey Mouse games, this one was our favorite. Circus Mystery. Harley's Humongous Adventure, just not a great game, but one I have fond memories of nostalgically playing with my mom. So, very cool. Not a good game, though, by any means. Hook, another one I used to play all the time. My mother used to love this one. I love this game. I think it's super underrated. It controls really, really well. It follows the movie really well. The music is phenomenal. Hook is an underrated SNES platformer, undoubtedly. Illusion of Gaia, a pretty good RPG on the system that I haven't played too much, to be quite honest. I've started it a few times, but can never get roped in. It's nothing against the game. I like the game. It's good, but just never get roped. I never get attached to it. Ken Griffey Jr. presents Major League Baseball. Talk about games my mom and I used to play. We were big baseball fans, and so we were huge fans of this game. The music, super funky music. Great music. I love it. Ken Griffey Jr. Baseball, still could play this with my mom to this day and have fun. Killer Instinct, a great 2D, pseudo 3D fighting game. One of the first fighting games I had ever played. King of Dragons, oh god, man. I'm so nostalgic for this game, and I love this game to this day, and have yet to beat it. I've played it thousands of times, hundreds of times, never beat it. I always need one more life, 2 more lives to be able to do it. My brother and I will pick up and play this game every once in a while and get pretty far, but never beat it, ever. It's so frustrating, but it is such a fun game with fantastic music. It's such a great game. Unbelievable music. Great gameplay that is nuanced. It's not just a beat 'em up, hack and slash sort of game. You really got to learn the controls. You got to learn how to block. You got to learn how to use your magic wisely. It is a strategic game. I love it. King of Dragons. Knights of the Round, another Capcom medieval beat 'em up here. Not as good as King of Dragons in my opinion, but still a really solid arcade beat 'em up. This technically is like a Dungeons and Dragons game. The Capcom did a couple Dungeons and Dragons games in the arcade, but they weren't able to get the name for the Super Nintendo, so they just called it King of Dragons. Sort of a dumbed down version of those games. I think it's better though, in my opinion. A Link to the Past. I mean, do I really have to say anything? One of my favorite Zelda games of all time. So many nostalgic memories of playing this when it came out. I was 5 playing this game in like the early 90s, and it just transported me. Magic Sword, another Capcom medieval beat-em-up arcadey game. Earlier one, though. Not great, but not bad. Not bad at all. Still one I do enjoy picking up on occasion, and I can't get this back in the goddamn fucking shelf. All right. Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse. Another Mickey Mouse game, not unlike Great Circus Mystery. Very fun. Mario Paint. I guess I'm talking about each and every one of these. I love Mario Paint. Oh man, it really sparked my imagination as a kid in the early 90s with that stupid mouse and the plastic mouse pad, and playing the fly game where you have to swat the flies, and the clever erasing of the work you did, and the music composing program. I mean, this is way ahead of its time. To have this on a console in the early 90s was incredible, and it was a pretty good Paint-like program. So Mario Paint, very cool game. I wish I still had the accessories. I don't. Mario's Time Machine, a game that I am so nostalgic for. My mom and I used to rent this all the time until the point where we owned it, and we always tried to beat this game. We never could. You know, in the 90s, we just thought this was another Mario game. We didn't know it wasn't made by Nintendo, or, I mean, it was published by Nintendo, but not developed by Nintendo. And God, playing it now, it shows. It's garbage. It's a fucking terrible game. But I still have so many fond memories of playing this with my mother and us trying to figure out what the hell to do in it. We wouldn't let it defeat us until it defeated us. So, moving on, we have Mega Man X, a game that I've yet to beat, but I have played and really do enjoy. Cinematic, one of the really early, more cinematic Mega Man games. I wish I had the sequels that are astronomically priced. I will never own them, probably. Metal Combat. No. Metal Combat was the second Super Scope game I had ever played, and it blew my mind. I gotta be honest. Playing with the bazooka Super Scope thing coming off of the Zapper and the Menacer, I thought this was the coolest thing. I thought light gun games were the most amazing thing for the 16-bit consoles. I really did. I used to love the Menacer, I used to love the Super Scope, and running around with that stupid thing, making little movies, and this one is just a straight-up mech combat game with the Super Scope. Not much to it, but I remember loving it, eating it up as a kid. Very cool. Michael Jordan, Chaos in the Windy City. Not a great game, but not a bad game either. Early EA stuff. I have very fond memories of this game. That's mostly why I own it, because I had it as a kid and played it as a kid and always tried to get far in it, but never could. I remember there was the cool stuff where it was a platformer, but around the level there were like hoops that you could dunk into and get power-ups. I thought that was the coolest freaking thing. So Michael Jordan's game that isn't Space Jam, Chaos in the Windy City. Obscure title, man. Mickey Mania. Love all the Mickey games. This one was done by Sony, ImageSoft, which is just... These games were, when compared to the Capcom ones, which focus on fun and platforming and a cute sort of style, these gave us a style very close to the original cartoons and still maintained the fun platforming. Not as fun as the Capcom platforming, but still fun nonetheless. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Oh my god, I played this game to death as a kid. Beat it over and over and over and over and over and over again. Playing as different Power Rangers, which basically were all the same, save for their weapons. Love this. Love this game. Love the music. Love everything about it. It's a one plane or a single plane beat 'em up, so it's not like Final Fight where you're able to go up and down. You're just straight ahead for this game, but still unbelievable. I love this game. Follows the show very closely, which is mostly why I love it so much. You know, growing up in the 90s, I loved Power Rangers, loved the game, loved the show, loved the figures, loved everything. All right, this Power Rangers game, however, which was based on the movie, Power Rangers movie, this one was a multi-plane, free roam beat 'em up like Final Fight. So they, I would say, fixed that from the original game. There's no reason why it couldn't have been that. This one is phenomenal as well. I am more partial to the original just nostalgically, but I do recognize this is a better game. And I did play this as a kid, just not as much as the original for some reason. And I loved the Power Rangers movie. Got Mortal Kombat 2 and 3. What can be said about Mortal Kombat that hasn't been said already? These games are classic, are fantastic, so much fun to break out at any time. Mystical Ninja. A game that kicks my brother and I's ass. We have tried to beat this game and cannot. It gets too difficult for us. Gotta be honest, but it is a great game. Mystical Ninja is a series that never really took off in America, despite us getting a bunch of their games from Konami. Mystical Ninja is awesome. The Legend of Mystical Ninja is the full title. NBA Jam! Hell yeah. I mean, Flying Leaner! Can you go wrong with NBA Jam ever? No, the answer is no. It's still fun to this day. He's on fire! Slams it in! I mean, I could go on and on and on. NBA Jam is awesome. This is a hockey game that I have, actually, that I acquired recently, because I don't have a hockey game on the SNS. I traded with a buddy of mine, just, common title, and he gave me this NHL game, which he says is pretty good. My brother and I like to play these sorts of games. Hell, we're still conceptualizing our channel or our show idea that we want to do. So, all right, coming down here, got Phantom 2040, which I hear is like a Metroidvania type of game, which I haven't played yet, but it is in the collection for a reason. Pilot Wings, which I grew up playing the 64 one more than this. I gotta be honest, I didn't play this really growing up. It's never really interested me growing up, to be quite honest. So, but I still recognize its importance, and it is still a really fun game playing it as an adult. Plock, really fun claymation-inspired platformer. solid platformer, I'd say. A lot of collectibles, very colorful, very vibrant art style. I love it. Pluck. Really good music, too. Ren and Stimpy, of course. I don't have all the Ren and Stimpy games, but I'd love to since I grew up playing all of them. Time Warp. Ren and Stimpy and Time Warp, early THQ. This is the bastard stepchild of beat-em-up games on the Super Nintendo. You got Final Fight, of course you got Streets of Rage on the Genesis. Rival Turf is Jaleco's sort of their interpretation of the beat-em-up. It is a rip-off through and through, but again, as a kid, those words weren't in my vocabulary. I was like, oh, this is like Final Fight. I want to play it. I love it. It's great. And it still is a good game. Not as good as Final Fight. The mechanics aren't as tight. Streets of Rage, nowhere near as tight, but it's still fun. And you gotta love that 90s as fuck artwork. If I could focus, damn it. Look at that. Can't go wrong. Alright, Shaq Fu, another one I grew up playing. Awful game, but still pretty fun to play. It's renowned for being bad, and it is bad, don't get me wrong, but, I enjoyed it growing up. It was a fun beat-em-up with Shaquille O'Neal, Secret of Mana, love Secret of Mana. Haven't beaten that game yet, it's brutal. Street Fighter 2, the classic by Capcom. The superior, I'd say, version to play. I mean, Turbo's probably better if you own that, but I don't know. I really like this version of Street Fighter 2. Super Bowling, a game my mom and I used to play all the time. I used to piss her off so much because I basically figured out the game and how to win and get a strike every single time after a while, and she was like, you're no fun to play with. Yeah, so that was me as a kid. I was like always trying to learn the game and be the best, I was like, whatever. But my mom and I used to love that game. Really fun to this day, even though I know how to win. Castlevania 4, Super Castlevania, one of my favorite Castlevania games. One of the best, guys. I adore this game from its atmosphere to its platforming, its action, its music. Oh, I think I just came. Super Mario RPG, another game that I've played time and time again and adore, but I've never finished. I suck at finishing RPGs. I really do. Super Mario World, oh man. So many fond memories of Super Mario World. And, of course, Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. This was the first game I played on the Super Nintendo. When I was 3 years old, I shit on the toilet for the first time. No joke. And my mother wanted to reward me, and she did so with the Super Nintendo. I was 3 going into 4, and yeah, because I pooped on the toilet like a big boy, I got Super Mario World and a Super Nintendo. But here's the thing, my mom played the hell out of it. I think it was her plan to get a Super Nintendo for herself. She knew I'd like it too, which I did, but that was one of the fond memories. I think I was 4, maybe it was 92. It was early 90s because the console came out in 91. But I do remember distinctly going to Woolworth, going down the escalator and seeing this in the case and buying it. And then Yoshi's Island, not as many fond memories. I played this later on emulator and really enjoyed it. The baby crying, yeah, it's a little annoying, but it's not a game breaker. Jesus Christ, this game is phenomenal. Such a great art style too. All right, we got Star Fox. I actually recently tried to beat this game and failed because it wasn't one I grew up with. I grew up with the 64 one more so. But Star Fox, the FX chip, really utilizing the Mode 7, whatever all that means. But the graphical style, the pseudo 3D, or the 3D engine that they created for this game is just phenomenal. And the game plays remarkably well still to this day. One of the more recent acquisitions here, I got really lucky finding this, Tetris and Dr. Mario. So it's cool to have these both on the Super, because I always play them on the NES. So going down here, got the Super Game Boy, which is very dusty. Haven't played this in a while. That enables you put a Game Boy game in here, I think Game Boy Color as well, and you can play those games on your Super Nintendo, on your CRT. So it blows it up, gives you a nice cool border to mess around with, and some other knickknacks, which are fun. But, yeah, very cool. Going down to the bottom shelf, Super Mario Kart, a game that I didn't grow up playing, believe it or not. My mother and I never discovered this one, but we did play the 64 version quite a bit and loved it. That's still one of my favorite versions, that and the newest one, 8. Super Metroid, I've played this game a few times through, loved it, absolutely loved it. Played it in the late 90s for the first time, and it transported me. The music, the vibe, the introduction, the atmosphere, the cinematic quality that this game had. It's phenomenal. One of the greatest action platformers ever made. And a game that really that really created a genre of Metroidvania, Metroid-like games. So, unbelievable game. Next up is Super NES Super Scope 6. This was the first Super Scope game I played. This had 6 games on it. All I really remember is like a whack-a-mole game and a Tetris, like a 3D Tetris thing, which was kind of cool. But it's been a long time. I haven't played this in forever. I don't have all the sensors anymore for the Super Scope. I mean, I do own the Super Scope, but not the sensors. Super Punch-Out!, a criminally underrated Punch-Out! Sequel, honestly. Punch-Out! Is regarded as one of the greatest action sports games of all time. This is fucking amazing, too. Like, why don't people talk about this game as much? I don't know. It's phenomenal. It's damn near perfect. It's a great sequel to the original. I don't know. I love both equally. The original is more nostalgic for me, of course, but Super Punch-Out! Is excellent. Super Smash TV! I talk about games my mom and I played incessantly and never beat this game. It's an arcade-style quarter muncher, and they really should have lowered the difficulty for the SNES version, but they didn't. I've tried to beat this by myself, can't do it. I don't have the perseverance. It is such a fun game, though. Robotron-inspired dual-stick shooter. I love it. In fact, you could play this game. No, you could play the NES game with 2 NES controllers, which makes it dual-stick, which is cool. But not that version. Super Star Wars, which is awesome to have. I hate that I have like the million seller thing. It's like the equivalent of greatest hits, but Super Star Wars, great games. Talk about hard games though, boy, Jesus. Same thing here, Return of the Jedi, Super Star Wars, and then I have Empire Strikes Back up there. There it is. Complete inbox. Next up, another underrated game, Super Turrican. All the Turrican games are great. Super Turrican might be my favorite. I love this game. Balls to the wall action, non-stop action platforming, great weapons, great soundtrack, all done by only a couple guys. I know one guy created the first game, and he did a great job with it. Not from this country, from, I want to say, the Netherlands or Finland or something like that. But Super Turrican is such a phenomenal game. Guys, check this out. If you haven't played this platformer for the Super NES, it is well worth it. Grew up playing the Turrican games, too. A series I'd love to see come back. It's a very 90s series. Toy Story. Grew up playing this and watching the movies alike. Loved this because it really followed the movie really well. Had some really cool cheats that I still remember to this day. And a lot of diversity. Racing and platforming and first-person segments. I mean, really cool game. Not great, but really cool. Another movie-based game. My father and I actually grew up loving this game, playing this game over and over. Again, never beating it. That's the funny thing about these games. We had a bunch of games growing up. My father was a collector, so we'd go to the next game if we couldn't beat it. We didn't sit down and try to beat it again. But we love this game. The music is great. It's very violent. That's part of what drew me to it as a kid. It's very, very violent. It's got blood in a Super Nintendo game, which is really cool to see. And like I said, follows the game really well, and it has Arnie on the cover, so you can't go wrong. Tin Star, a game that I grew up playing that I always wished was a Super Scope game, but it isn't. It is just a fun gallery arcadey shooter, not unlike Punisher for the NES or Dynamite Duke, things like that for the Genesis and arcade. Tin Star is just a fun game where you could shoot almost everything on the screen, a lot of little cheats and Easter eggs and things like that, but the idea is just clear each screen of enemies before your hero here, Tin Star, gets canned. Next up, UN Squadron, a shooter that is probably my favorite shooter ever made, behind Axelay, I'd say. Axelay's still my favorite because I've actually beaten it. UN Squadron I've been playing since 92, 93, and I've yet to beat the damn game. It is brutal. You really have to manage your money well and your weapons and everything like that. The music is phenomenal. Early Capcom game here based on Area 88, an old manga and anime. And UN Squadron is fantastic. One of the greatest shooters ever made. And one of the early SNES titles. Next up is Excalibur. This game has some dope music by a band called like Psychostick or Psychosonic or something like that. The music is the most memorable thing about this. Very techno, very dance heavy. It's actually not a bad game. It's a sword-based strategical platformer. Like, you can't just go and run and gun in. You have to learn the enemy's attacks, so it's not unlike Dark Souls in that way. but you really have to learn the enemy's attacks, especially the bosses, and just grind away at it, chip away at them. And it's a fun game. I wish it was paced a little faster, paced sort of closer to where its music is paced at, because it's a thumping soundtrack, I tell you. Check out some of the music for Excalibur, because it's an underrated score, at least, and maybe a forgotten gem of a game, too. I really do enjoy this, and I still pick up and play it every once in a while. Oh, man. Last but certainly not least, talk about music. Zombies Ate My Neighbors. Oh, I love this game. Growing up, I gravitated towards it because it was monsters, and it always reminded me of Night of the Living Dead, the cover, which I grew up adoring. And yeah, I mean, this is a co-op action sort of puzzle game, but not really. Very light puzzle elements. The puzzle elements come in because you have to save all of the neighbors, the civilians, before the zombies could eat their flesh. So it's very cool. It's got nods all over the place to classic horror films and sci-fi films. The music is very 50s, 60s horror flick. There are a lot of theremin and things like that. So good. Sorry. I need help. But yeah, Zombies Ate My Neighbors, one of the best games on the system by Konami. I adore this game. It is superior to the Genesis version. I would say I've played both, and I love both, but this is the one that I have in my collection, that I've had in my collection since the mid-90s. I love this game. So these things up here, I just want to show you real quick to round out this part of the video, but all these are complete in box. Super Mario 64, Lion King, Super Mario All-Stars, Super Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, Aladdin, and Donkey Kong Country. Here we have, one of my pride and joys, the Nintendo Action Set. I've actually got another one up there. That is the Control Deck, so not as spiffy as this version here. But I got a couple boxed Advance games there, Advance Wars 2 and Metroid Fusion, two games I adore. Got some swag, some little Mega Man stuff, his helmet, a half-working Game Boy, a half-working Virtual Boy that is missing the suction eye things on the back. And then here's my little turtle corner here. You got TMNT Complete on the NES, a game that I grew up playing since I was like 3 years old. Adore it. Turtles in Time, same thing. 4 years old, I was playing this game. And of course, the good old Turtle Van that houses the animated show in completion. Got a couple amiibos here that I got for Christmas the year they came out. Donkey Kong and Mega Man. I love those. My brother got me this little Terminator head too. It's like plastic. It's very cool. So that rounds out the first part of this video, where I talk about my Super NES collection and talk about the top, my display area here. The next part is going to be my entire NES collection, guys. I'm going to try to get that into one part. It might end up being two, but I didn't want to make these too long, so hopefully you enjoyed this, and stay tuned for part 2.